I want to share with you a long story, and it may make you go through many different levels of emotions. That story started with a seemingly simple dream, but then took me to strange places, unprecedented experiences, and finally a lesson that I always remember in my heart. I hope that when you listen, you will feel the warmth and belief in the miracles that exist in this life. My name is Matteo Rossi. You can imagine me as an enthusiastic young Italian man growing up in a fairly peaceful town near the Vineyard Hills, where the summers are warm and sunny and the winters are cold, although nothing can compare to the harsh cold in the Arctic region that I am about to tell. In my childhood, I did nothing outstanding except like running around the riverbank, reading a lot of books about geography, the ocean, and even remote lands like the two poles of the earth. Honestly, when I was a child, I just thought that snow and ice were something beautiful and full of mystery. I was fascinated by close-up photos of icebergs, blue icebergs, and pristine areas without human footprints. At that time, I was just curious and didn't think I had any chance of setting foot there because no one around me had ever planned to go far, let alone to the Arctic region. However, that smoldering passion kept growing, becoming more and more intense every day. When I entered college, I chose to study oceanography and glaciology. Some people ask why. I can only shrug my shoulders and say that I love the mystery of icebergs, ocean currents, and the vast ocean. It sounds vague, but it is that passion that has helped me overcome all difficulties. I met many teachers, heard stories from explorers who had been to the poles, and watched documentaries. They talked about the bitter cold, the sudden snowstorms, the powerful icebreakers, the winter nights without the sun. It sounds challenging, but I feel my heart beating faster, a surge of excitement, like when people yearn to discover things beyond their reach. From then on, I started practicing physical exercise habits. Every morning, I wake up early to jog a few kilometers, then practice deep breathing to get used to the cold air. I read countless related documents, from how to set up camp on the ice to how to recognize dangerous ice cracks. It sounds theoretical, but it all planted in me the seeds of a big adventure. I graduated and set my first steps in life as a young researcher. Through a research center in Venice, I was invited to participate in an international collaborative project on ice surveys in the Arctic region. When I received the news, I couldn't believe my eyes. Would a young scientist like me have that opportunity? I was confused and excited. My mother, the woman who always worried about my illness, was both happy for her child and scared at the stories of snowstorms. My father also advised me to consider and ask again and again, "Do you really want to take on this challenge?" But no matter what anyone says, I still feel like I'm standing in front of an open window. If I just have the courage to jump through, I will experience life according to my desires. After a few days of thinking, I wrote a letter to the project management board, confirming the invitation. I told myself, if I don't go this time, I'm afraid I will regret it for the rest of my life. After several months of preparation, the day of departure finally arrived. I left Italy and flew to Oslo. Before departing, my friends held a small meeting. Everyone cheered me on, wished me luck, but did not forget to warn me, don't freeze into a statue. I laughed and swallowed my saliva, because in my heart there was still a glimmer of fear. Maybe things wouldn't be as easy as I imagined. The plane landed in Oslo. I immediately felt the cold increase significantly. After a night's rest, I caught another domestic flight directly to a locality in northern Norway. There, I met the research team, about a dozen people from all over. Everyone had both eager and serious faces. There was a young Canadian researcher, a German geographer, a Japanese meteorologist, and then the team leader was a Swedish man in his 50s, named Henrik, who had decades of experience traveling in the polar regions. We had a short meeting to get acquainted, then divided the tasks. Henrik looked at us, his eyes very calm, as if about to give a series of useful instructions. He said, "The ice area we will approach is located on the Barents ice shelf, a place that has been suspected of abnormal melting for many years. The group will use icebreakers to enter the area, camp for a short time, drill to take ice samples, measure indicators, then analyze and return." It sounds simple in theory, but in reality it's unpredictable. I swallowed hard, imagining storms, sudden cracks, white snowstorms. However, there was an indescribable feeling of excitement, like I was touching a dream. I realized with tears that I was so lucky. An elderly German expert patted my shoulder, smiled, and told me that the first day I set foot on the ice is often the most memorable moment of my life. I could only nod, my heart fluttering. We spent 2 days in that coastal town preparing equipment, checking protective gear, arranging food, and not forgetting to learn how to prevent frost and frostbite. People pass on tips to each other, such as always wearing an extra pair of dry gloves, a pair of thick socks, and drinking lots of warm water to avoid letting the body lose heat for too long. At night, we slept in narrow rooms, but everyone laughed and talked happily. I met a Japanese friend. He was young but had been to Greenland a few times. He said he liked the feeling of standing on a giant piece of ice, surrounded only by wind and silence. Hearing that sentence, I imagined a majestic scene, and my stomach became even hotter, wanting to leave immediately. The morning of leaving the wharf, the sky suddenly turned gray. The clouds were thick, but the wind was not too strong. The icebreaker appeared before our eyes, exuding majesty, floating in the cold water. The sound of machinery rumbled, ready to split through the blocks of ice blocking the way. We walked up one by one, checked our luggage. Everyone wore thick clothes and hoods, leaving only our eyes exposed. I chose a place near the side of the ship to stand and look out. During the journey through the waters of northern Norway, I saw icebergs occasionally passing by, some big, some small, some blue. As the ship scraped against the thicker ice, I heard a crashing, crunching sound, as if the ship was cutting through a field of rocks. The feeling was both overwhelming and thrilling, making my heart beat continuously. Henrik appeared next to him, said in a deep voice, "Don't be afraid. This is the lightest part," then smiled gently. I smiled back, knowing that I was truly starting on an adventure. It took us a day of floating before reaching our intended location. At night on the train, many people retired to their own rooms. I kept wandering around the deck, sheltered from the wind, talking to a few teammates. They asked me if I felt too cold. I nodded. But honestly, that cold made me feel like I was living an intense life, different from the past few months of wandering around the noisy city. The cold makes me alert. My brain feels stimulated. My heart beats fast. Dopamine surges as if I'm ready to receive any experience. That night, I also found it difficult to sleep, not only because of the sound of the engine, but also because of the excitement. I lay on the bed, closed my eyes and opened them again, my mind racing about the snow and ice scene that I was about to encounter. For a moment, I remembered that I used to be attached to books about expeditions. Now, I'm about to get a taste of reality. Thinking about that, a dull joy spread throughout my body. The next morning, when the ship docked temporarily in a thick ice area, I was one of the first people to get off. The cold air hit my face. I shivered a bit, then took a deep breath. Before my eyes, a magnificent scene appeared. Gray sky, endless white snow, huge blocks of ice standing like walls. I stood still for a few seconds, feeling my heart pounding, and overwhelmed by the grandeur of nature. A few others took out cameras and took pictures continuously. As for me, I want to enjoy it with my own eyes, to keep in my mind the first moment. That was a moment that I believe I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Standing in a place that I thought could only be in my dreams, seeing myself as small but stronger than ever. We started work, including a surface safety survey. The guide reminded us to follow the available path, avoiding areas suspected of thin ice. I looked down at my shoes, feeling like each step on the ice was like a hard mirror. Every time I listen, I imagine that underneath is a layer of cold, silent seawater with mysteries that no one knows. I was nervous, but also proud that I dared to face it. There were times when the wind picked up and threw burning snow particles onto our skin. We had to lower our faces and blink continuously to brush off the snow. In my heart, I felt a feeling of excitement mixed with caution, but looking over, I saw a sparkling smile on each person's face. Everyone feels proud because we are doing work that not everyone in this world dares to do. At noon, we stopped and had a light meal. Many people are exhausted, but their mouths are still chattering. Some people tell stories about cold countries. Others talk about their dream of conquering Antarctica. I met a German researcher. She had traveled through both the Arctic and the Himalayas, which sounded incredible. She said, "In this ice area, the nights are very long in winter. Sometimes the sun is almost invisible." She camped for several weeks, experienced the terrifying silence, wandered around in the dark, and learned how to stay calm so as not to go crazy. Hearing it made me shudder, but she laughed and said that people gradually get used to it. And thanks to that, they have the opportunity to observe nature more closely and discover many interesting things. I also shared about my journey, that I dreamed of going to places where few people go, to see if the snow and ice are as beautiful as I see in books. As I spoke, I clearly felt my heart pounding because I knew I was truly experiencing it. She nodded slightly, saying that my first steps were commendable. The important thing was to stay optimistic, be careful, and never underestimate the power of nature. After lunch, we started setting up equipment to take measurements. The sound of the drill ringing raucously, mixed with the sound of the wind blowing, sometimes felt cold down the spine. At one point, the radar picked up some strange signals, so we pulled together to check. People were excited, thinking maybe it was a sign of warm underground water or a moving iceberg. In science, everything is important, because even small discoveries contribute to understanding more about our planet. I concentrated as much as possible, took notes, and took screenshots of the device. A slight shiver ran through my body, perhaps due to the cold, but also perhaps because I was too happy. Everything went quite smoothly until at the end of the day, several strong winds suddenly blew up, making the ice surface shake. We quickly arranged our equipment and ran toward the ship. As I ran, I heard my heart pounding and my legs felt like they were about to stutter. I remember Henrik's advice: if the weather changes, you must move quickly and safely. Don't panic. And indeed, we remained calm and finally returned to the ship before the blizzard blew over. That night, on the train, I leaned my back against the metal wall, watching the night scene outside the small window. I remember the wind blow just now, the moment when I was scared but still calmed down. A thought suddenly appeared in my mind. I was venturing into a place with many potential uncertainties. But then, that fear became the driving force, making me even more determined, not wanting to turn back. I confided in a Japanese friend. He said that difficulties like that are the best way to understand the value of the journey. He said, at first he was scared, but then he got used to it and found this place even more majestic and beautiful. I nodded, thanked him for sharing, then took out my notebook and wrote a few lines. Nature is majestic, but it also has potential risks. We must always be grateful and respect everything around us. When I write, I feel relieved, as if I am connected to my original dream. The next few days passed, and we took many short trips off the ship, back, and on again. We collected a wealth of data, hauling long ice cores aboard for analysis. Everything went quite smoothly, except for the cold winds that often appeared suddenly. Everyone became bolder, jokingly calling each other all kinds of nicknames like Snowman, Icehead, or Iron Leg. The group atmosphere is very sociable because we all understand that solidarity will help each person feel warmer in a harsh place. I often wake up early, jog a short distance on the deck, inhaling the bitter cold. Every time I do that, I feel my body is full of energy and my mind is excited, as if dopamine is automatically filling me up, making me constantly want to take action. But, those seemingly normal moments suddenly led me to an unexpected event. That day, we received an unusual signal from an ice area farther away than the original range. The radar shows strange fluctuations, like electromagnetic pulses. It wasn't planned, but the group was curious, wanting to see what was going on. The team leader decided, we will divide into two teams, one staying nearby to continue the old work, the other going deeper into the other ice area to survey. I enthusiastically volunteered because I was truly eager to discover anything mysterious. Henrik leads my team, which consists of 7 people. We brought full equipment, food, and temporary tents in case we stayed overnight. We left the ship early in the morning, traveling on small snowmobiles. During the journey, the wind blew quite gently. The sky was clear, making visibility far away. The more we walked, the more we saw signs of instability in the ice, long cracks, some uneven surfaces. I noticed the detector, detected many oscillations, but did not understand what it signaled. Henrik signaled us to be cautious, trying to go around suspicious areas. At one point, the GPS was jammed, so we had no choice but to rely on experience and observation. At first, we weren't too worried, because we thought the polar regions often cause signal loss. However, I felt something uneasy in the air, as if this place was vibrating with underground waves. Henrik also seemed unusual. He was quiet, said very little, and occasionally squinted at the meter. Suddenly, around noon, the tape measuring camera beeped continuously and then turned off. Almost at the same time, the whole surface seemed to tremble. Our team could only shout, "Be careful!" Then a harsh cracking sound rang out, like thunder. I couldn't stand steady, fell over, trying to hold on to the nearest piece of ice. 2 other people also cried out. A large crack tore the ice surface in half. In an instant, I saw the white color disappear under my feet, replaced by a deep black hole. Then I fell. It feels like I'm falling forever in an uncertain moment. My head hit hard. Everything around me blurred. The last moment I heard was someone calling my name, mixed with the cold rustle of the wind. After that, there was absolutely nothing left. When I woke up, I didn't feel as much pain as I should. Instead, I had a strange feeling, lightness, like I was floating. I looked down and saw my body lying across broken blocks of ice, motionless. I blinked, thinking I was hallucinating, but gradually realized I was high above, looking down at that same body. Strangely enough, I understood that my heart had stopped beating. I touched the air, touching nothing, like a thin mist. I should have panicked, but no, I felt incredibly calm. A warm light appeared behind me, making the space peaceful. In that light, I caught a glimpse of a very familiar image. I knew it was Jesus, even though I was never religious. His presence made me feel boundless love and comfort. All fear, all chaos was erased. I just let myself be swept away by the light until a voice rang out in my mind, gentle but full of authority. He said there were things I needed to be shown, that my journey was not just within this block of ice, but involved a greater truth. Suddenly, the scene changed. I could no longer see the pile of broken ice. Instead, there was a vast space filled with soft white light. In an instant, I felt unconditional love surrounding me, as if I was enveloped in the warm embrace of a loving mother. And then, Jesus showed me strange sights, giant structures under the ice, structures that bore no resemblance to human civilization. I saw blurred visions of some ancient buried force, and the wall of ice served as a seal to keep them from rising. There was something very distant yet extremely familiar, as if I had heard of it before but didn't fully understand the meaning. He showed me a future where research teams would soon claim to have found a great discovery, possibly related to a mysterious civilization. People will constantly release shocking information, evidence of superior technology, or even related to extraterrestrial life. However, deep inside, it was a sophisticated plan. Powerful people can take advantage of humanity's curiosity, leading them to be confused, lose true faith, and then be ready to accept new things that are dangerous for the soul. When I heard those words, I felt extremely confused, because I am a person who only believes in what my eyes see, what I hear, and based on data. Yet now, I am facing another realm, hearing supernatural warnings. Jesus said I still had a mission, that I was chosen to see part of the picture and had to return. He gently placed his hand on my shoulder, and that warm feeling multiplied, bringing tears to my eyes. I understand. I am being given a responsibility to warn the world, or at least to tell, so that those who need to hear will hear. He led me to look towards my body, where several comrades were struggling, trying to revive themselves. I saw their panicked faces and frantic gestures. I saw myself lying motionless, with no signs of life. Farther away, there seemed to be dark, cold shadows, gently circling as if stalking life. Jesus looked at me and gently said, "Don't be afraid. I'm always with you." Then the light suddenly disappeared, and I felt a strong suction pulling me towards my body. Everything seemed to shrink into a dot, then burst out. I was startled, coughed, felt a burning pain in my throat, and my lungs felt like they were on fire. I heard screaming, "Matteo! You're awake!" I coughed and opened my eyes blearily. The surrounding space was white and extremely cold, but I was clearly alive again. My teammates hugged me, swaying in the howling wind. They pulled me out of the crack, constantly calling my name, checking my pulse and breathing. Turns out, my heart stopped for a few minutes, and they tried every way to resuscitate me. Everyone was surprised that I was alive again. I felt dizzy, my chest hurt, but a deep consciousness told me that what I had just experienced was real. It started to storm, so we quickly found a way to get back to the ship. Henrik and a few people had to carry me on a stretcher, tie a seatbelt around my body, and skillfully maneuver through new cracks. The sky was getting dark, a snowstorm arose, and we faced the risk of being blown away by the wind. At that time, there were times when I thought I would be exhausted, but the spiritual strength inside arose, reminding me to hold on tight, don't let go. There was still much work to do. After several hours of struggling, we arrived home. The train welcomed us with a warm yellow light. I was taken to the medical room on the ship. The doctor examined me and concluded that I had severe hypothermia and a head injury, but was not temporarily life-threatening. I fell asleep, my head still spinning with images of warm light and warnings. In the following days, I was cared for and recuperated. At first, everyone wanted me to rest and didn't ask much. However, when they saw my face getting better, they were curious. "You were clinically dead, Matteo. Do you remember anything?" I was speechless, wondering if I should tell. Then finally, I decided to speak. I slowly talked about the feeling of leaving my body, about the divine presence, about the brief images related to the conspiracy under the ice. Many people were skeptical at first. Some looked at me with concern. Others remained silent and did not speak, but Henrik seemed to be very attentive. His eyes seemed to light up. I told them that I didn't force anyone to believe, but what I experienced was so real that even I, a person who is strict with data, could not deny it. I said that there must be something more than icebergs under the ice, that the rupture was not accidental. Then I said, this is not just a scientific mystery, but also related to something bigger. Some teammates quietly agreed, because they had also heard many stories or rumors about forbidden areas in the polar regions. Some people say that the governments of many countries have carefully hidden some information, not allowing in-depth research. Maybe the things I see are somewhat mysterious, but maybe they reveal some truth. I realize I'm not an idealist, but I can't pretend like nothing happened. Since then, every night, I dream of giant blocks of ice collapsing, strange entities rising from the ground, groups of people believing they are discovering a prehistoric civilization, but then being deceived. In my dream, I saw a world in chaos, where people worshiping saviors is not the right path. I woke up in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat, feeling anxious. The next day, I told Henrik. He suddenly put his hand on my shoulder and said very softly, "It's not by chance that you were brought back to life. Perhaps you should be the one to raise the alarm." I bowed my head, my heart pounding, because I knew it was very true to what Jesus had said during that experience. At the end of the survey, the whole group returned to the mainland. Even though it wasn't due yet, they had to stop early due to a prolonged storm and some technical problems. We brought with us ice samples and collected data, but perhaps the most valuable thing to me was the lesson about human smallness in front of nature, and a mysterious revelation that touched my soul. When the ship docked, I stepped off the dock, feeling like a completely different person. You can imagine, before I was passionate about science and only believed in data, but now I cannot deny what I witnessed in the state of my soul leaving my body. I accept everything with respect and gratitude. I returned to Italy, spent a few weeks resting, recovering from my injury. My family was happy that I survived, but also saw that I had become more mature and thoughtful. Friends were busy asking questions, wanting to hear about the trip. Some people were excited. Others thought I might have hallucinated due to the strong impact. I gradually understood that my job was not to convince people of the presence of Jesus or of ancient forces under the ice. I just need to tell my story, share a warning. The truth sometimes lies beyond the data, and there may be sensational things published soon, but be careful. The world may be attracted to claims of a sophisticated civilization, a breakthrough that seems wonderful, but in that glamour, people can lose faith, lose connection with conscience. The important thing I want to emphasize is, don't let curiosity take you away, and forget to consider carefully. Science and faith do not need to oppose each other, but can support each other, as long as we know how to put everything in humility, aware of our limitations. I started writing short articles and sending them to a few informal scientific journals. Some places post it, some places don't. I recounted my near-death experience, described my feelings when I met Jesus, and had horrifying visions of the future. Not everyone believes it, but occasionally I get messages from strangers saying they've experienced something similar, or they have doubts about polar projects. They said thank you because I dared to speak up. That gives me more motivation to not give up. Occasionally, I also encounter criticism. Some say I'm crazy, but I always remember the warm moment beside the light source. Remember the message, "Warn the world." It was not an order, but a loving message. Sometime later, I returned to the academy, studying the data we had obtained. Ice melt index, temperature, ocean currents all show that something different is going on. And I heard that major countries have begun to announce some exciting news about ancient discoveries under the ice. Many media channels also spread rumors about alien technology or evidence that humans were created by some advanced species. The atmosphere was filled with excitement and controversy. Inwardly, I was startled, remembering the words Jesus showed me. If that becomes a trend, millions of people may believe blindly, then be led to lose core values and follow a false belief. I clearly see that risk, but what can I do? I'm just a young scientist, not in great power or influence. Then I remembered Henrik's words. Your task is not to convince everyone, but just to tell the truth. Therefore, I continue to tell my story when I have the opportunity, continue to urge people not to rush, to believe in flashy things, to always keep their hearts at peace, to always have faith, and especially not to cut off their relationship with God. For those who listen to me seriously, I often advise them to read prayers, pray, or at least spend time contemplating and thinking carefully, not letting curiosity overwhelm reason. That's when I realized my near-death experience didn't suddenly come to me, but was a gift. Thanks to it, I found the true meaning of research work, not only limited to data, but also placed in a broader context of spirit, compassion, and truth. Time passes, life returns to its usual rhythm, but I still keep in touch with some people in the group. They said that after that near-fatal ice crack, everyone looked back, was more careful, and listened to each other more. One person in the group, after returning, changed his research direction to environmental protection, wanting to do something to keep the ice blocks from melting too quickly. Another person said he had learned more deeply about spirituality because what happened to me made him believe that an invisible world exists next to the physical world. It seems that all of us, to a greater or lesser extent, have been awakened from our old outlook. Nature is not an object to be exploited, but a part of us, a great living entity, hiding many secrets that need to be respected. Occasionally, I return to my hometown, where there are green vineyards and gentle hillsides. When my childhood friends asked me about the ice area, they laughed and said, "You're really crazy, but really cool." I just smiled gently, saying that life is too short to be afraid. We should spend time on truly meaningful things. They asked me if I planned to return to the North Pole. I nodded, saying that I would definitely come back, not only because of my passion for science, but also because that place showed me a new horizon, not only on the map, but also in the way I perceive life. At the same time, I also always remember the warnings. What is hidden under the ice has not yet fully emerged, but one day, humanity may pave its way, perhaps out of ambition, curiosity, or profit. At that time, the line between truth and falsehood, between righteousness and evil, will be very thin. Since the day I returned, the fear of death no longer haunted me like before. I look at death with more tolerant and calm eyes because I have reached the moment the soul leaves the body and have met him in the warm light. What's scary to me now is the prospect of people abusing progress to turn their backs on faith and love. That is the true death of the spirit. Every time I think about it, I suddenly feel my heart tighten, then become determined to do something no matter how small. So, I continue to research, continue to write and share. I always hope that if the story I tell can touch someone's heart, making them live more consciously, less caught up in strange trends, then that will be a small success. Because in the end, I am just a limited person who cannot change the world, but can contribute a sincere voice. Even now, when I remember every detail, I still feel trembling, as if I had just returned from a dream that was too real. I remember the eyes of my teammates when they saw me startled back to life. Remember the snowflakes on Henrik's eyelids. Remember the harsh wind on that ice area. In the blink of an eye, life and death seemed only one breath apart. However, it is that fragile boundary that makes me understand that we can find light as long as we open our hearts and are ready to receive spiritual things that we previously only considered myths. I also learned to cherish every day, because every day we are alive, breathing air, sharing, is a priceless privilege. Nature always reminds us of balance, being humble before the boundlessness of the universe, but at the same time being steadfast because we can still choose good, positive actions. If you ask me, what is the most important part of this story? I would say that it is the realization that faith and love can illuminate science and reason and are not in opposition. Before, I always assumed that science is the only thing. Everything must have clear evidence. However, near-death experiences have opened up another perspective. There are truths beyond machine measurement. If science explains the how of existence, then faith can show us the why hidden deep within it. The harmony between the two sides helps us keep a clear head and a warm heart. I think that's why Jesus chose to appear in that harsh moment, to show a stubborn person like me that this world is much richer and more mysterious. And because of that, I better understand my responsibility to the community, even to the next generations, so that they do not get caught up in illusions or deceptions. Now, looking back on the entire journey, from the time I was a boy passionate about books, to the day I set foot on ice and snow, almost died, and then was revived, I deeply feel that every beginning is worth it. If I hadn't dared to apply that day, wouldn't have dared to step outside my comfort zone, then maybe I would have just sat at home forever, wishing that one day I would go to the polar region. And if that day I hadn't fallen into the crack or had any trouble, would I have had a chance to recognize the spiritual world and hear that important warning? Life sometimes arranges things very cleverly, even if we don't realize it at first. Looking back, I still shudder when I clearly see a series of interconnected events bringing me to the right time, right place, and then changing my life. The important thing is that I didn't let go, didn't panic too much, and was ready to receive that supernatural help. Perhaps you are asking yourself, in the end, what do I want you to take away from this whole story? Actually, I just want you to understand that every dream, no matter how far away it sounds, can come true if you have faith and preparation. Life can lead you through unexpected, even dangerous turns, but it is there that you will learn lessons that no books can teach. And sometimes we can't see the big picture if we don't put our faith in spiritual things. It's not by chance that our hearts know how to vibrate, know how to love, and know how to desire something more than hard data. Science is important, but science will be more complete if you open your mind to mysteries that are beyond logic. I also want to emphasize that on this journey, do not go alone. Just as I once went with a group to the North Pole, we stood together, sharing risks and joys. Life is the same. You need teammates, relatives, people who are willing to listen and support. They may not be able to revive you after an accident, but they can hold your hand in times of despair or smile and encourage you when your spirit is shaken. When you have people like that by your side, even difficult things become easier. And you should also be one of those people willing to be spiritual support for others, because giving trust and love is the way for us to grow and be happy. Through it all, I hope you understand that this story, although it sounds extraordinary, is still rooted in very ordinary things. A boy's dream, determination, teamwork, effort, and even a relationship with the spiritual world. I believe that you also have dreams and pieces to assemble the picture of your life. Give yourself the right to desire, the right to dream big, the right to face the risk of failure. Because it's better to fail after daring to try than to sit around wondering if only. When you bravely take action, you will be surprised by the power hidden within yourself. It is a treasure that only when faced with challenges can you dig deep and find. I don't know what the future holds, whether the world will soon receive earth-shattering news about the mystery under the ice, or how people will react. But I am sure of one thing. I have been and will continue to share warnings, hoping people understand that science does not destroy faith, but if we combine them correctly, we will move forward with awareness. Nature, whether it is the Arctic ice shelf, the Amazon jungle, or the deep oceans, has laws and powers that go beyond the limited understanding of humans. We must respect it, learn from it, and keep our hearts oriented toward true values instead of being seduced by superficial glitter. Finally, I want to close this story by saying thank you to life. Without life, I would not have the opportunity to experience happiness, fear, passion, and even the moments between life and death. Without life, I wouldn't feel the warmth of human love or the glorious moment of the ice glistening in the morning sun. Without life, I wouldn't have understood that there is always a fire inside every person, just waiting to be ignited. And especially without life, I wouldn't be able to stand here, sincerely sharing with you what I've been through. That's why I'm grateful for every day I get to breathe. I appreciate the opportunities to learn and be loved, even though sometimes they appear under a difficult mask. And above all, I am grateful that Jesus has made me understand that death is not the end, but a door to another level of consciousness where we can connect with a warm light source and then return, carrying our own mission. My story, although it ends here, my journey continues. I am still Matteo Rossi, a glaciologist, but now in my eyes, ice is not just ice, but also a symbol of unsolved layers of mystery, of the seal of nature, and of the very smallness of humans before the universe. Keep your courage to move forward, keep your faith in the noble, and don't forget to cherish every day you're alive. I hope this story gives you a little bit of inspiration, a little warmth, so that you dare to reach for your own dreams. Because who knows, maybe somewhere, in the middle of seemingly cold ice, is where your heart can burn brightest. Wishing you lots of energy, and hope that one day we can stand together on the white ice, smiling proudly, because we are not afraid to adventure and live according to the life we believe in.